Today, I want to talk about the trap that Anthony Joshua has fallen into when it comes to his training. Now, lots of people think about Anthony Joshua and his training, and they think he does too much strength work and conditioning work. And you'd be surprised, I actually agree with that, even though strength and conditioning is essential. I am in complete agreement with Hatman on this one. Fighters need to be doing more boxing work. That's how the majority of your conditioning needs to come about. They need to use the weights room to get stronger, but literally it should make up about maybe 30% of their training when they're not preparing for a fight, and 15%, 20% when they are preparing for a fight. Unless you have a guy who's really, really skinny, the absolute best thing to do for their conditioning and for their ability as a fighter is to make them fight more. As in, hit the bag more, spar more double hand bag work, more shadow boxing, more footwork drills, technique drills, head movement, all this kind of stuff. One of the rare exceptions is when you have somebody who is very skinny. You need to get them out of the gym so much. They shouldn't be in the gym so much. They need to be pounding down the food, getting a lot of sleep, and obviously weight training to make sure they have a favourable body composition. All right, but this is the trap that Anthony Joshua has fallen into, and it's more a trap of his mentality, and it's oh so typical in the British amateur boxing system. Now, anyone who has been into a British amateur boxing club will recognise these phrases that I'm about to say. These are said by coaches the country over, and they're just blanket advice without any actual substance to them. So when a young fighter is sparring or even fighting, they will say, don't get involved. Keep your hands up. Keep it long. Jab him. Ones and twos. Double jab right hand. Hands back to your face. Now on the surface these may sound like good bits of advice, but they lack detail, they lack substance, and they lack diversity in the fighter's game. So I'll start with an example. These are all examples about myself that I'm going to give you. Now, I was exceptionally skinny when I was a kid. But as a result, I'm average height. I was quite tall for my weight class. So if somebody would close the distance on me and I was in a situation where I had to fight in the pocket, I get screamed at, don't get involved. Well, what am I meant to do? Run around like a Mir Khan? This guy's got quicker feet and better angles than me. One of the things that I can do as the taller fighter is tuck up, shorten my punches, and start to lean on the guy. Why am I getting screamed at to not get involved? This brings in a mentality out of people that just because they have the longer arms, the only position they can fight in is the long range. It's absolutely stupid. And it doesn't develop their head movement or their angles. And this is something that we see a lot in British fighters. They're usually very stiff, upright and robotic. We saw it with Frank Bruno, Audley Harrison. We've seen it with Anthony Joshua. And the list goes on and on. That's just a few heavyweights off the top of my head. I remember David Haye used to get a lot of criticism because he'd have the left hand down. He wouldn't have it down all the time, but you need to vary the height of your hands. But anyway, that's on to the next one. But in terms of not getting involved, a fighter needs to know how to tuck up, fight in the pocket. The best technician probably of the last 20 years is Floyd Mayweather, and he was known for his ability to fight in the pocket, and he had exceptionally long arms. Especially later on in his career, he knew how to defend and fight in the pocket. This whole don't get involved mentality that I hear time and time again. You can watch fights from decades ago in British boxing, and you'll hear that shouted. Actually, David Haye has got a few of his amateur fights uploaded from the 90s, I believe, late 90s, early 2000s. You're just hearing people scream, don't get involved, keep your hands up. It's just piss poor advice. Now, I want to keep your hands up. This, of course, doesn't factor in several things. The guy's shoulders could be getting too tired to keep his hands up. Well, see, he can't just keep his hands up the whole time. They have to come down at some point. A better piece of advice would be when you're moving out of the pocket, get the hands up and get the chin down. That makes a lot more advice, especially that's much better advice, especially for somebody who doesn't have the lateral movement to exit the pocket safely. That's much better advice. When they're out of range, okay, get those arms down, give your shoulders a bit of a rest. It doesn't factor in that if I'm the taller fighter, I have my left hand lower, it splits my opponent's vision. So they have to look at the low left hand and they have to look at the high right hand. I can put the left hand out if it's low, it touches my opponent, I immediately know it's safe for me to then pull back the left hand and flick it as a jab, or to do the same with a hook, or even in some cases an uppercut if I pivot to the left, or to shoot a straight right down the middle. Or I've even just saw a video of Floyd Mayweather doing this to Miguel Cotto. He'll have his arm out a little bit, his left hand out, and then he came through with a right hook. This whole just keep your hands up the whole time mentality is absurd, and it's one that Anthony Joshua cannot get out of. It's why he is so stiff. And it gets to a point where fighters pull their punches because their hands aren't up. They'll half-ass their attack and then immediately pull them back to their face because they realise they've made a mistake, a so-called mistake. Same thing with the whole don't get involved mentality. They'll start to trade and they'll start pulling their punches because they're thinking in their head they need to get out of the pocket. When in reality, if they learn how to tuck up, shorten their punches, they wouldn't have this issue. They'd be able to fight in the pocket when it's necessary. And also, sometimes a tall, long fighter like Anthony Joshua is going to come across another tall, long fighter like Tyson Fury. Somebody taller, longer, better mover than him. He's going to have to take it to them, and he doesn't know how to, because all he's been told is keep it long, don't get involved, jab him, keep your hands up. That's all he's been told. Next one, again, keep it long. This mixes in with don't get involved. You saw Anthony Joshua in both Usyk fights. He didn't know for the life of him how to make it a fight in the pocket. He kept it long. He kept it very long, actually. But Usyk just made little steps inwards so that he was within his range, hit him, and moved outwards. If Anthony Joshua had learned good inside fighting, he may well have won. And this is why the Tyson Fury-Usyk fight's so important to happen, because although Tyson Fury doesn't have the best shots on the inside, he has good grappling skills. Jab him. Again, lacks substance, lacks context. Jab him where? What if you can't hit the guy's head? Okay, jab him to his shoulders, his chest, and his elbows. Those may not be scoring areas, but they're going to beat him up, and it's going to make your opponent unwilling to throw punches. It's going to put them in their shell. What about a stiff jab to the body? Anthony Joshua neglected that in both Usyk fights. It showed he had success with it in both fights and just completely neglected it because he reverted back to type, to what he's been taught for the last 15 years. It's just not good enough, and it's typical amateur British boxing system. Ones and twos, again, it totally lacks substance. I heard Rob McCracken scream this a million times. What ones and twos, you can't just throw a straight jab and a right hand all the time. You just can't do it. How about you say to them, right, what you're going to do is you're going to throw your jab out, aim it to the shoulder. Then you're going to step to the left a little bit, feint the jab to make them move. They're going to think you're moving to the left, then come through with the right hand. That's a much better maneuver. I've just come up with that off the top of my head. That's much better. It's still a 1-2, but I've just split it and I've thrown a feint and I've thrown in footwork with it. And it's just so typical. They teach you to move back in straight lines. And look, there's nothing wrong with moving back in straight lines on many occasions, but you also need to learn how to pivot and all this kind of stuff. Nobody In 5 years, taught me how to pivot. I had to teach myself. I literally, by watching people box on the internet, like Muhammad Ali and what have you, that's how I learned footwork. I didn't really learn it from my coaches. And this is just, people go, well, that's at a lower level. Well, I've met Olympic coaches. How's that? What do they focus on? Straight shots, bring your hands back to your head. That was it. That was the advice he had for us. It was piss poor. Again, double jab, right hand. So, again, there's no variety to it. How about jab to the body, then jab them to the chest, then right hand back down to the body? Or just any, if you're the taller fighter like Anthony Joshua, have your left hand flying down, jab to the body, jab to the head, then right hand to the head. Or jab to the head, jab to the body, right hand to the head, or right hand over the top. Hands back to your face. Again, like I said, this goes back to don't get involved and keep your hands up. The first line of defence cannot just be to keep your hands up all the time. For one, you may need to block punches to the body. You may need to catch shots. It can't just be to keep your hands up all the time, especially such a big man as Anthony Joshua. This system, British amateur boxing, it's good for winning tournaments in the amateur system. It's good for winning tournaments against fighters who don't know how to make it physical, who aren't tremendously skilled, and typically British amateurs don't really dominate tournaments. It's usually Eastern Europeans and Cubans and what have you, people who've really thought about their craft. It's a system that needs to be absolutely just eradicated. It's just dreadful. We saw the 2008 Olympic team and how limited they actually were when they turned professional. James DeGale, very limited, didn't know really anything else. Billy Joe Saunders, Campbell, we can't just go on raw talent, and that is what Anthony Joshua is. He is raw talent, and the key word there is he is raw. You look at someone like Tyson Fury, came from the same system, but he understood professional fighting is a different mentality. It's a different mentality. Tyson Fury understands he cannot guarantee victory. He can only do what he can do to stack the chips in his favour. And that is why Tyson Fury is a more diverse fighter. It's why Tyson Fury, when he's taught something new, he executes it as though he's done it all his life. Because he does not have the mental hang-ups that Anthony Joshua has. Tyson Fury knew who to ignore. His dad was a professional fighter, although not a successful one. His dad understood the physicality of it. You have to understand, when you constantly reinforce negativity into fighters, when they try something new, because it is new, they hesitate and revert back to type. You look at Anthony Joshua, he tried new things in the Povetkin fight and the Andy Ruiz fight, but he did them all half-assed. And as a result, he's thinking, well, it's because I kept my hands up. I didn't keep my hands up. The second Alexander Usyk fight, yes, he did a better job defensively, largely because his hands were up the whole time, but he did a far worse job offensively. Right? You look at the times where he had a lot of success in the second fight, his left hand was low and he was jabbing Usyk's body. Usyk's vision was split. He wasn't sure how to move. But then he reverted back to type. Anthony Joshua needs to try and forget a lot of what he has learnt. And that is the difficulty. And you may think I'm being harsh on the British amateur boxing system. Plenty of people have said this. This is just my experience as well of being an amateur British boxer. It's just my experience. It was the same things over and over and over. Occasionally I might meet a pro fighter who had some good bits of advice for me. But again, it was just always hands up. Neglecting the fact that even though I did endless rounds on the bag, etc., I can't keep my hands up the whole time. Don't get involved. You have to understand, it may only be 5% of the time that somebody can close the distance on me like that, but when they can, I need to know a way to beat them on the inside, because I can hit them with jabs as they're coming through and cause damage. Now they're here, I need to know how to mitigate the damage to me and maximise the damage to them. And this is just so typical in the amateur British boxing system, British amateur boxing system. So tell me what you think. Please subscribe to this channel. Give this a like. I'm getting some subscribers now, and yeah, I'm trying to get the ball rolling. Obviously, I'm going to do thumbnails and all that kind of stuff, but I just want to get my first 100 videos out and just focus on my delivery and trying to come up with topics, okay? I have a feeling I'm going to have to do a part 2 about this, because there's so much dumb stuff I see in boxing gyms. And look, there's dumb stuff in boxing gyms all around the world. But why is Usyk the complete package? Because he can fight close, mid, and long range. He can move his head, move his feet. He can change his hands, the positioning of his hands. Tyson Fury can too. He can do some of that better than Usyk. He can't do all of it better than Usyk, but he's better at some of it than Usyk. His feet are very effective, largely because of his size, but also because he knows how to place them. Anthony Joshua could learn how to move backwards so much more elegantly. If he'd learnt that, we wouldn't have had the problem with the first Ruiz fight. Then if he'd learnt how to maul in the pocket, we wouldn't have had the problem in the first Ruiz fight either. Look at Floyd Mayweather when he was hit by Shane Mosley. What did he do? He understands, if I start throwing, I'm open to being hit. And because I've been hit hard, my reflexes aren't quite there. So he started to maul Shane Mosley. I remember Emmanuel Stewart picked it up immediately. Larry Merchant and Jim Lampley, as good as they are, they were getting very excited, right? Emmanuel Stewart's, no. You can see, even though he's buzzed, how much stronger Floyd Mayweather is. It's not necessarily that he was actually physically stronger than Mosley, because Mosley was actually a much more muscled man. It's because Mayweather understood the technique behind mauling people. Lots of people get this confused. They look at big muscle heads getting thrown around and they think, well, they're not as strong. It's not necessarily they're not as strong, because they are, in the true sense of the word, stronger. They can lift more, they can push more, they can squat more, right? But they don't have the technique to be in a leveraged position to get all their force behind their steps, their strides, their pushes, as well as the guy who's practiced that for 10, 15 hours a week. Your boxing training can't just be throwing jabs and right hands. It needs to be preparing for everything. Another example, David Haye, when he was getting ready to fight Jean McCormack, he would do something like, I think he said 50 roly-polies, so he'd be dizzy, and then he'd wrestle Adam Booth off of him and do all these drills and things, because he needed to prepare for if he was hit and hurt. You think about that, maybe a couple of hours of that a week, Anthony Joshua might get used to the feeling of being dizzy, because I can tell you, you get hit in the head, you literally see bright spots, your ears start ringing. Suddenly, you need water like there's no tomorrow. And I remember a time when that happened to me, where I talk about a few times I've been I was hurt in sparring. Guy buzzed me really hard. I saw black and stars and ring. Then my vision came back and I was still seeing stars. And hearing this ring, I didn't know what to do. Next time I was stalking someone, they caught me on the top of the head and my leg just sort of jolted a little bit. And I was like, I sort of accepted it a lot more than the first time that had ever happened to me. Remember another time, I was sparring somebody, out jabbing him. He caught me with a right hand and my leg just wobbled, stiffened, but I stopped myself falling. And I remember in that moment, I was like, right, okay, took some steps back, immediately started jamming the body. As soon as I felt like I had my feet underneath me, I started to apply the pressure because I'd learned from those experiences. Now, obviously, Anthony Joshua is way more experienced in that situation than me, but just because Anthony Joshua is better than I ever was, ever could be, no matter what, it doesn't mean that he's developed every single aspect of his game as well as he could. It doesn't mean he understands his limitations. And you see him as a person, he's not comfortable with who he is. He just isn't. So this has gone on probably way too long. I really hope you like this video. I know what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying not to make too many notes here. Okay, I don't want to make too many notes. I just want to use this to practice speaking in public, speaking to people. Because when you see like pundits in boxing, they don't have time to make a script usually. And if I do these, much like Ade, he's really great on camera because he's been used to talking to nothing but a camera for like 10 years now. So thank you very much. You have yourself a great day. Thank you.